Hello, my name is Professor John Benjamin. This is West Virginia Wesleyan College, and this is Graphic Design 1. And today I'll be walking you through the book cover assignment, which you would have already selected your object, photographed it in the lighting studio using a sick effect or a sick wall, which is a curved wall so that the object doesn't have any surroundings. And you'll have that image ready. And then you'll also have come up with a metaphor for your image and a book title. All right, so let's begin. All right, so we're in InDesign. We have a 6 by 9 inch document, which is a standard size for most paperback books. And I have my title and the author. The title of my book is Global Economics by John Benjamin. That's me. And I'm going to go ahead and collect my photo. And my metaphor is the spokes of the global economy maintain equilibrium. So my title is Global Economics, and I have a spoked wheel as my visual metaphor. And now essentially the metaphor is this spoked wheel is like the Earth, if you will. And so to make it more planet-like, I'm going to, and sort of give it a sense of dominance and seriousness, I'm going to change the position. So a lower position gives the object sort of a sense of submissiveness, sort of like a bird of prey looking down, bird's eye view looking down at prey, versus a worm's eye view, which looks up and it seems more dominant. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. So if I select my image, now remember here, if I select it with the black arrow, I get the frame. And then if I select it with the white arrow, I get the image, which is cropped by the frame. And I can move it within the frame. And I want to go ahead and rotate it 180 degrees. And one way to do that is to come over to your Properties panel and just hit these little rotate 90-degree arrows. I'm going to hit it twice. The perspective is more of a worm's eye view. All right, and then I'm going to create my grid so I can create a relationship between my image and my copy. So let's go ahead, say Layout, Create Guides. I'm going to get rid of my gutters. And it's a 6 by 9 book, so I'm going to create a 6 by 9 grid. And that gives me a nice sort of cubic square grid. All right, then I'm going to bring in my copy. All right, I'm going to select a typeface. This is a sort of an academic or a fairly sophisticated topic, so I'm going to choose a modern. Let's go with a modern Bodoni. And I'm going to make it larger. First, I just want the title larger. In this case, I feel like the title is more important than the author. In some cases, the author is actually more important than the title. And therefore, then that will be the larger or hierarchically more important. So I feel like that's pretty balanced. So I need this wheel to reference Earth a little bit more. Where right now, if you looked at this book, the cropping might suggest a metaphor, but I think the audience might need a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now take this image into Photoshop. And to do that, I just select it, and then I right-click, and then I say Edit Original, and then that takes it into Photoshop. All right, and what I want to do is I want to mask out the background. And there's many ways that you can do this, but I think for this it's a pretty geometric shape. There's pretty solid contrast between the spokes. So I'm going to just simply use my Magic Wand tool. If I select on that, I have the Quick Select tool and the Magic Wand tool. I'm going to just go ahead with the Magic Wand tool. Now, one of the things you want to keep in mind when using these tools is you want to consider the tolerance. So typically, 32 is a great number, and that sort of gives you a nice middle average, so you can have a soft selection. It doesn't select extreme contrast between pixels. It gives you a nice sort of gentle contrast. A harder contrast would be 0, and 0 is a lack of tolerance, and so therefore it's only going to select areas that have extreme contrast. But I'm going to make it somewhere a little bit between 32 and 10. All right, and what I want to do is I just want to select these pure white areas. Now notice you can subtract or add here. So that way I can click on one and I can click on the other one, and it's going to remember the last one that I selected. And what I want to do is just come around and select each of these like so, these white areas. And I can do that because there's enough contrast. Now when I have the marching ants, I can essentially see most of what I've selected, but it doesn't really give me a full picture. So I might have missed a few spots. And so in this case, that's where I'm going to turn on the quick mask. Now you can find the quick mask over here in your tools palette at the bottom, or you can simply hit the Q key. Let's see, it says edit quick mask mode for the Q key. And so quick mask mode gives us this transparent red mask, which references traditional photography in a darkroom. And you can see here that I've missed quite a few spots. And so now I've got to go back in there. Now what I can do is I can zoom in and I can use the brush tool if I want. And you can see I could use black to paint the mask, or I can switch to white to get rid of the mask. And that's one way I can do it. But again, in this case, I'm going to turn off the quick mask and just simply go back to my wand and just keep clicking on these little spots that I missed. All right, and then I'm going to hit quick mask again by hitting the Q key, and I'm going to zoom out, Command 0, and take a look on what I've got. I think I have them all selected. Right, but now you can see that the magic wand tool isn't perfect. It needs contrast, and there wasn't enough contrast on these spokes because of the reflection. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into these areas while I'm in quick mask mode, and I'm going to use a different technique to cover them up. Now I could use the brush, so I could go here and paint with black. I have black paint, it's going to be 100% opaque, and I can paint like that. And that's one way to kind of get a nice kind of organic smooth line. Or if I wanted a more geometric line, because if I'm painting, I'm like, kind of like, I don't have that great control. So in that case, I'll go to my lasso tool, and there's the polygon lasso tool. And so I could go ahead and click and create more of a geometric selection, like so. Now to fill that with solid black, in this case to make a mask, I'm going to create a folder. And then now that I have my marching ants here, and I have my folder selected, I am going to create a mask in the folder, and that way everything inside the folder, and you can see the mask gets rid of the wheel, but that's not what I want. So what I want to do is I want the background to be masked. So now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to inverse my selection. To do that, I just go to Select, Inverse. Now, if I create the mask, there, the background's gone, and the wheel is still there. But again, I don't want a layer mask, I want a layer group mask. So now I'm going to go ahead and select the folder in my layers here, and then select the mask. So that way everything that's in the folder is then masked. So I'm going to drag my wheel into the folder, and then you can see, now that the wheel is in the folder, it is masked. But now what I want to do is I want to create a color gradient that just affects the wheel. So to do that, I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go to my gradient tool here, and I am going to select a gradient. So if I double click on the gradient up here, I get some options to start with. There are other gradients in here. And this one looks like a pretty good place to start. I want sort of a sky, water sort of gradient to kind of reference the earth. But I'd like this to be a little bit more aqua, add a little more green in there. So I double click on this box to pull up my color picker, and then I'm just going to move my color picker down into the green spectrum a little bit more, like so. And that looks perfect. Then I hit OK, and then I simply drag, using the gradient tool, I click and drag the direction I want my gradient to be in, like so. All right, and now you can see I've got this gradient layer that's just affecting the mask layer because it's inside the folder. Now, if I move this outside the folder, you can see it covers everything. That's all I've done is I've created a gradient on a layer. And if I move it inside the folder, then only the mask is what we're going to see. If I move it down below, we won't see anything because that whole image is covering it up. But what I want to do now is create a layer blend or a transparent blending. So I'm going to select this layer and I'm going to change the blend mode. And I can test the different blend modes to see which one suits what I'm looking for. Now I want this to be more of a metaphor. I don't want the audience to think this is a book about hubcaps. And so I'm going to choose something that looks a little less realistic. Multiply is usually a safe bet. but this is the effect that I'm looking for. So I'm going to select multiply blending mode. And there I have it. And I'm going to move back to InDesign. And then what I'm going to do is replace this image. Now the new image has the same dimensions. So if I select my image and I hit Command D or File Place, and I search for my image and select Open, it just replaces it perfectly because the dimensions were the same. All right, and here I have my book. Now one of the things I'm noticing here though is I'm only seeing a small portion of the aqua gradient. I think I want a more gradient, so I'm going to change that a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and move back to Photoshop, and I'm going to adjust this gradient. And so when I'm on the gradient layer, which should have a name, I'm going to select my gradient tool. I have my same gradient selected, and I'm just going to click and drag in a different area. So I'm seeing a little bit more of the aqua color, like so. Then I'm going to hit Command S to save and move back to InDesign. Sometimes InDesign automatically updates and sometimes it doesn't. So if it doesn't, you have to go to your links palette, go to Window, Links, and you can see there's a little caution sign saying that it's modified. And so I can double click that and it'll update, and you can see it updated. And now we're going to bring this book cover into a template so that our client can see what it would really look like on a book itself. All right, so now to do that, I'm going to export a JPEG of my cover. File, Export, JPEG. All right, and now this is a mock-up, so I want it to be RGB. It's not something I'm going to be printing, but I do want the resolution to be 300 pixels per inch. So that's all good, quality maximum, and I hit export. The next thing I'm going to do then is go to my Smart Object PSB file. Now I provided you a link cover vault where Mark here has been kind enough to offer a variety of free mock-ups that you can use for your own portfolios. All Mark asks is that if you download one of his mock-ups, that you leave a comment. One of the mock-ups that Mark has provided, here it is, 6x9 cover vault. So this is the book mock-up that I'm going to use, but I want to see what my cover looks like in this mock-up. All right, so how do we operate a Smart Object PSB file? Well, you open it up, then you look in the Layers palette, and so I want to alter the front cover or replace it with mine. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that layer, and you can see here that Mark has a little highlight there at the top, and here is the contents of the cover. That's where you're going to put your file, and then he's got some other gradients and shadows. All right, so what you want to do is double click on the front cover layer right here. Just double click. And that will open up this PSB file. And here you can simply drag in your file. So here's my file. I'm just going to drag that in. All right, and I'm just going to hit return. And you can see it went on the second layer here. I'm going to move that up, and so there it is. Now I can choose to delete the one that Mark put there. And then I'm going to hit Command S to save. And then I can close out of the front cover PSB file here. And then you can see there is my cover, and me and my client can get a sense of what the book cover will look like in real life. And then so to complete your assignment, you will then take this file and say File, Save As, and you'll choose a JPEG and give it a better name and submit that for the assignment. Great. Well, thanks again for joining me. I hope that helps.